Well, thank our guests for coming and the crew. As you know, Ron Cornilles is running for Congress, replacing David Wu. And Ron took time here a few weeks ago to come to tour Lektro and meet you guys personally, see the operation. His office contacted me last week and said that he'd like to talk about his position on exporting. And Lektro came right to his forefront of a company that he used as an example as an export. As we know, we've got a tug out there shipping to Oman, number 2 today. And this one was supposed to go to Israel, but due to a fault we found, we held it back. But right now, about 50% of our product is going international, as you guys know. And it wasn't too long ago that 80% was going international. So international is a major factor for Lektro in our business. And you know, we need the international market, and some of the free trade agreements that are taking place right now are crucial for Lektro. So we need them, they need us, and Ron's here talking about it.
Thanks, sir. I'm going to take my spot. Here we go.
Yeah.
This is nice. Hey, thanks for coming, and thanks for allowing me to be here at Lektro. I'm sorry some of you had to cut out work 30 minutes early. Really apologize for that. But I wanted to just quickly introduce myself for those I haven't had a chance to meet. Met you last time. But some that I didn't get a chance to meet, or those of you who haven't had a chance to really learn much about our candidacy. First of all, Eric's a good friend. He's becoming a better friend all the time as he allows me to come and spend time with you, interrupt your work. But he's also a friend because Eric creates jobs. And that's something, quite frankly, that we need more of in this state. And we need more of in this country. Now, there's a lot of people who created jobs. And there's a lot of people who want to create jobs. They want to start a little enterprise. Maybe they've got an idea out of their house. But they're seeing things right now in Washington, D.C. that make them nervous. In fact, it might even prevent them from taking that bold step. And that's why I'm running for Congress. I want to talk a little bit about those things. But some background on me. I say I'm kind of a kindred spirit to Eric because 16 years ago, not quite as old as Lektro is, but 16 years ago, I started a business out of my house. I live in Tualatin in Washington County. And my wife, her name is Allison. We've been married 25 plus years. And we have 3 boys. And I came to her one day and I said, I have an idea for a business, an idea to help the industry that I was currently working in. That industry was professional sports. You may look at me and you might say, yeah, right. Have you worked in pro sports? Really, I was an offensive lineman for the New York Giants. And that's the only untrue thing I'll say all day. Actually, I used to work for the Los Angeles Clippers basketball team. What did I do for the Clippers? Well, I worked in the executive offices. And my job was to try to bring people to Clippers games. Not just once, not just twice, but time and time again over the years. And you couldn't wait for the team to play well. That wasn't going to cut it for you, because they never did play well while I was there. But rather, you had to give people a reason, whether it's a family, whether it's someone who has a business, whether it's a nonprofit organization. You had to give them a reason to come to a venue that they might not otherwise be interested in. And once they're there, they achieve a positive result from that experience. That positive result could be memories with the kids or grandkids. A positive result could be, hey, I just won over a new client that I invited to the game that night. It could be we built better teamwork in our office because we came as a staff or as a work crew to a Clippers game after work, and now we like each other better because we entertained with one another. It could be that our nonprofit organization got a little bit of promotion and had some building, some bonding time. All kinds of reasons why people go to sporting events. And that's what we focused on. And as a result of that focus, we started to sell out our games consistently. And we did it through a particular type of methodology. Well, that methodology became known around our league, around the NBA. And then I was invited to go around to these various teams and share with them our strategies. And that led to a business. The thought was, you know, if this thing can work in Clipperville, it can work all over the country. So we moved back to Portland, or Tualatin specifically. My wife and I are both from the area. And we started this thing out of my bedroom, out of my spare bedroom, as I said. Over the last 16 years, we've worked with 400 professional sports franchises and college athletic departments in best business practices. Just as Eric knows best practices for this industry, I know a little something of best practices for that industry. And those 400 clients have allowed me to do what I wanted to do early on, and that is expand, grow. Now, when a small business owner says they want to grow or expand, what does that mean? Well, some people would perhaps villainize them and say, well, they just want to make more money. In my case, I wanted to hire people. I wanted to bring more people into the fold, so to speak, and give them an opportunity to work in an industry they love and to have fun and, yes, be prosperous. And over the years, GameFace has hired about 60 people in 16 years. We don't have nearly as big a shop as you do. We've never been this big all at one time. But we've had 60 people go through our doors. And hopefully they all left better than we found them. And we've also, over the years, been able to create 500 jobs. 500 jobs for people all over the country who wanted to work in our industry. In fact, just on the way up here today, I was speaking to one of those gentlemen. He works for the Houston Rockets. And he came to GameFace many years ago wanting to work in sports. I trained him on the things that we do in our industry to be successful, and today he's a vice president of the Houston Rockets. When I saw him, nobody would take a phone call from him. Nobody would even look at his resume. So when Eric talks about creating jobs, it's something I understand, because I've had the good fortune of doing that as well. Again, for more than 500 people around the country. Now, why do I bring this to you today? Because, quite frankly, ladies and gentlemen, what's going on in Washington today is preventing people like me and like Eric and others who are here from taking risk and thinking that that risk might turn into something positive someday. And so, as they say, a lot of people in this country, and certainly in Oregon, rather than invest in maybe growing their operation and bringing on 2 or 3 more people, or 2 or 3 new products or services, they're sitting on their hands. Why are they sitting on their hands? Because for one, they don't know what the tax ramifications will be of hiring more people. They don't know what kind of regulations they'll have to work around or work through. They don't know also what health care is going to look like. Since most employers do want to provide some form of health care to their people, they don't know what the costs are going to be. They don't know what government's going to mandate or force them to do as it relates to health care. There's all these uncertainties out there. Now, uncertainty is great at a sporting event. That's what makes it fun to watch. You don't know how it's going to end up. It's also very interesting in theater and television and movies. But in business, it just kills you. Uncertainty. You have to have predictability. You have to be able to know what's around the corner, not just 12 months from now, but hopefully 5 years from now, or 10 years from now. And one of the other reasons why a lot of companies in Oregon are not expanding is because we are a very trade-dependent state. And Eric just mentioned that. 50% of your customers, your clients, Israel, Oman, and others, they rely on you. But if you have a government that is not being friendly towards those potential trade partners, those countries, then it obviously stifles your ability to grow and expand. Now recently, as most of you probably know, the federal government, specifically Congress, passed what we call free trade agreements between the U.S. and South Korea, Colombia, and Panama. I have been arguing for years that we have to pass these free trade agreements faster. Why? Well, these particular agreements have been sitting on the president's desk for more than 3 years. And they even began in the previous administration, in the Bush administration. These trade agreements are agreements. They mean that the U.S. wants to do more trade with these countries, exports and imports. And both sides agreed to adhere to the rules of the game. And that had been determined years ago. But too many people in Congress didn't think, or specifically the executive branch, the president, didn't think it would be helpful to our country. Well, a few weeks ago, he, frankly, changed his tune. He said, you know what, I realized these free trade agreements would actually grow jobs. So he sent the legislation up to Congress on Capitol Hill, and they voted to authorize it, and now we have more countries that can buy Lektro equipment. Now here's the sad fact. I'm the only candidate running for Congress in the 1st District that has been a proponent for these free trade agreements. I have 2 on the Democrat side who have absolutely said, no way, these free trade agreements are bad for Oregon. And a 3rd on the Democrat side who says essentially she hasn't made up her mind yet. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these things have not only been out there for years, they were passed 2 weeks ago, and someone hasn't made up their mind how they would have voted, and they're running for Congress to be your representative? I call that finger in the wind politics. I'm just trying to wait and see what's politically expedient before I make a decision. We don't need that anymore. We had that. That guy resigned. We need someone who represents this district who understands how strong trade agreements can be to grow this economy. Not only for your business, but for others in your neighborhood, in your community, and all throughout this district. Let me be clear though, it doesn't mean that we just pass trade agreements just to pass trade agreements. It's not trade at any cost. As I said earlier, you've got to hold your trade partners, you've got to hold their feet to the fire. If they break the rules, there needs to be a consequence for that. That's what the agreement is for. And that's what you rely on the administration to enforce when those agreements are not being adhered to. So you're not the only business. There are 270,000 jobs in the Portland region that rely on international trade. The 50 or so employees at Lektro are among those 270,000. You know what the biggest employer is in the 1st District probably? Intel. 15,000, soon to be 16,000 employees. Every single one of those jobs at Intel relies on international trade. Nike is number 2, 6,000 employees. Every single one of those employees relies on international trade to grow that business. Columbia Sportswear, number 3, 5,000 employees. I just got a phone call today, which I missed, from the chairman of Columbia, talking about trade. Every one of those jobs relies on international trade. Solar World, Genentech, all of these big companies in this congressional district. So for anyone to suggest that they don't like free trade agreements, they don't understand the 1st District, unfortunately. That's why I'm asking for your support today. I do understand the 1st District. I've lived here practically my whole life. I understand what it takes, not only to make sure you have a job, but if this is important to you, it's important that your kids have a job when it's time for them to maybe take your spot on Lektro, or maybe to start their own business. Because Lektro needs all kinds of support companies, locally and of course across the country, to support what you do. And those companies rely on trade as well. I have 3 sons, as I mentioned. 2 of them are in college. And I really fear that when they're ready to graduate, there's not going to be as many opportunities for them. And there's not going to be a chance for them to say, maybe, someday, at their kitchen table, hey, I'd like to start a business. I'd like to partner with my buddy across the street and start a business. Or my old roommate from college. Why? Because they will not have the kind of certainty that Eric and his family have had historically, and that I had in 1995 when I started my business. We owe it to ourselves to take an active role in paying attention as to what's going on in Congress, because it affects you. It affects your livelihood. It affects your paycheck. It affects the schools that your kids and grandkids attend. It affects how strong your community here is in Warrenton and Astoria. I'm paying close attention now. I'm asking you to do the same thing. If you haven't registered to vote, You won't be able to vote in this primary, but register for the general election. Make your voice be heard. Don't let someone else dictate your future. You don't need to let that happen. You can actually decide what kind of economic and social future you want to have by getting involved as your owner has. And I give him tons of credit and my respect and admiration because he has stood up and said, this matters to me. It matters to my employees. It matters to their future. And one other thing I'd like to say, and then if you have any questions, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them. And that is simply, if you've paid a little bit of attention, like some vote, like a lot of people have in this district, you know that we're currently without a congressman. We're the only congressional district out of 435 in this country that doesn't have a representative right now. The only one. And I find that shameful. We're better than that. We deserve more than that. Now, why don't we have a congressman? Because too many voters didn't pay attention last time. And they elected someone who was underserving us. And that's a kind way of describing it. I'm asking you to pay attention. I'm asking you to also raise your expectations of what your congressman should be and what your congressman should do. I think your congressman should be someone that your kids can look to and say, you know what? I'm now not cynical anymore about politics. I grew up watching Mark Hatfield. I grew up watching Vacant, Tom McCall. These people, in my mind, were models of public servants. We've lost that somewhere along the way. And that's why 9% of the American population approves of Congress today. So if you can raise your expectations of what your congressman should be, if you can raise your expectations of what we can do for you, then you and I are going to be on the same page. Because I've elevated my own expectations of what I should be and what I should do for you. I may not always satisfy you. I'm sure there will be times when even Eric and I will disagree on things. Heck, my wife and I don't agree on everything. But as long as you know I'm working hard for you, as long as you know that I understand what matters to you, as long as you understand I'm going to use best judgment at all times and truly try to be a public servant rather than just try to serve the interests of people back in Washington, D.C., then I think you and I will understand each other. I'm a small business owner. I'm not a career politician. I don't know how to play those games. I'm not interested in playing. I'm interested in making this a better place for you and your kids and your grandkids because I've chosen to stay here. You've done the same thing. We owe it to them to do all we can. This is a wonderful opportunity with this special election to turn this thing around starting in Oregon. And I hope you'll join me.